All right, everybody, we're back out here at the Champ shop. The car is looking fantastic, and we'll go over that in a minute. I have a whole pile of stuff I want to go through today and kind of get on the car, or at least figure out, because like each of these things kind of needs things to work on the car. So we'll get to that and go through it. But first, I want to show you the car and then show you the pile of stuff I got to go through. So Dan went through and repainted the interior of the car, not black. This is a gloss light gray, and it will help us be able to see things when we drop them in the car, and just generally, you know, looks more uniform because the other one was just a bunch of layers of black. And we got the trunk sprayed and everything. And then I got the tail lights out, and I kind of straightened up the rear end a little bit. It actually looks a lot better. It holds the bumper better, and the trunk lines up better. So this year in Champ Car, I don't know if I ever pointed this out, we don't run with rear windows or side glass. We're not allowed to have side glass, but we can have the rear windows. We'll probably work on that over winter, but this season, this one race we got this season anyway, we're gonna leave these open for now. The car is ready for the dash to be put in it for the most part. So what I'm gonna do is get a couple of peripherals like the headlights. I got new headlights. Got the engine harness, which can go onto the spare engine. We'll get to that. Got the cables I made in an earlier video. You want to see how I made those? It was published in like February. Got the boost control solenoid with its 2P DT connector on it. I've got some stuff for the engine right here, which is a couple of, that probably shouldn't have been dropped, but okay. That's an oil pressure sensor, and we're not going to use these leads anyway, but that is going to be run directly to the HON data along with an oil temp sensor. This is a block plug, kind of like a breather plug. So what we can do is either cap this or use it as a return from the catch can. Let's see here, the cool suit, which everybody's seen already. Tail lights, let's just get to this in a second. Tail lights are the typical blood red and smoked. This guy here is a rain light. So basically we just have a switch ground for this guy, and it just goes right here. So what I'm going to do now is get to installing all this stuff, and we'll see how far we get. All of this stuff is kind of a work in progress, right? There's no like set way to do this because everything's pretty much custom right out of my nugget. So what I got to do is put things on, and I may have to take some of it back off and take it straight back home and continue working on it. But for now, getting it on the car and seeing where it sits and how it works is a pretty good deal. Okay, so we're cutting to the next night because my phone got low. I was in the Fury, so I didn't have a phone charger, and you're crazy if you think I'm driving that car anywhere with a dead phone, because I don't trust it yet, but it did fine. So Robert and Dan came over, and we got a bunch of stuff done, and I'm gonna run through it all with you now. We're skipping the time lapses this video, so this should be pretty short, sweet, and to the point. So let's talk about what we did. Now that the engine's out of the car and you can kind of see it better, and I'll go through some of the things we're still going to change, I want to give another rundown on this thing because this engine is honestly very impressive. So let's do another rundown real quick. It kind of looks like a little bit of a mess right now. Go ahead and take that off of there. That's not a toolbox. So we've got the harness on, and it looks like insanity right now, but it's really not that bad. Now this engine here is a D16Y8. The long block itself is completely stock aside from ARP head studs. Everything in there is Honda. There's not even aftermarket bearings. It's all Honda, everything. That way we can get stuff really quickly at the track if we need. This engine was tuned by Eric Hargett at CIA Performance in Columbus, Ohio, just outside Columbus. With an eBay manifold, as you can see, we had to repair this thing a few times and gusset it. It's not pretty. It does the job. And an eBay, I believe 50 trim, 206 wheel horsepower, 195 wheel torque. We'll start at the front. We're gonna get a new oil pan bung made. This was just kind of a kit that we bought, and that's how it was done before. And this thing is kind of kinked when it's put on there, and it doesn't smoke. It drains all right, but we definitely don't love it. So we had an EGT sensor, it quit working, so we clipped it off and just kind of using it as a plug right now because it's internally gated, so we don't need a wastegate there. I did add a boost controller for this on the car, so we should be able to tune our boost a little better and get more response out of this thing. Not going for more power with that, just better control. Oil cooler lines are kind of refitted, basically. We had to do some pretty crazy stuff last year, and I looked into some changes to make it better. This wiring harness you saw in the last video, it was already redone. I did redo this last year, but I did not record it because it was before the YouTube channel existed. The injectors are RDX 410cc injectors and just on a stock fuel pressure regulator. But that turbo, no issues. I mean, honestly, if I bought a D-Series car, this would be exactly what I'd do to it and just flash this tune on it. But moving on around the back of the car, I got my old chargeback cable put on there. It's separated out of the engine harness to kind of help with noise. Now you can see the hole in the Mishimoto oil sandwich plate right there. That is going to be an oil temp sensor that I still have to wire in. When you're wiring in sensors for your Honda S300, go to the Honda help section. Everything you need to know is there. They literally spell it all out for you. All you got to do is look into it a little bit and you're all set. This guy right here, that is the breather plug that I was talking about earlier. We capped it for now. Eventually we will have an AN line running through here to return it, but not right now. We don't have the time or the budget to deal with that until we have everything else bought. We have the oil cooler lines, which are tough to see. Well, no, they're not for you. They are for me. They are up there. The one on this side is the feed to the cooler. The other side is the return. This is the turbo feed, and it is teed off of the sandwich plate right there. This is the pressure sensor. The reason it is here, this will be around to the Honda as well. That is the worst case. That is right at that is after the cooler. It is also right at the bleed to the turbo, and I call it a bleed because we added it. This system was never intended to supply oil to a turbo. So this is the perfect place for this. That'll be worst case oil pressure. And then on the other side will be the oil temp. So, because up top, dead center, which you can't see, right in between those lines, I capped off where the OE oil pressure switch was and got rid of it because we have a gauge, but we'll at least have a way to monitor it. And then all this stuff runs super nice, doesn't touch anything. Like, I'm really proud of this harness. And then the way that this thing just looks, just sitting like that, I mean, this will come straight out of there. It looks like a racing engine. Looks pretty good. You know, as far as 200 horsepower, 4-cylinder economy engines go. I'm gonna get some caps for this. That was a rush job last year, I forgot about that. And then this thing, this is something else we're changing. I'm sure people are wondering about that. Yes, it's awful. That was a fix at a race. Reason being, this was our outlet. We hang a hard left-hand corner. All the oil goes this way. It all piles up right about here. The blow-by in the engine then blasts it out. So we capped this off, and then we added this, and we had to have a quick disconnect so that we could get it off to fill the engine with oil. Not ideal. So what I'm having done, I got another oil or a head cover off of a junk engine and an oil pan. So what we're going to do is run a 45 off of this, a straight out of the oil pan right here, and that will be our new oil return. Much straighter, and it's not kinked, and it should flow better. Any little bit helps. And then the head cover, we will have 2 AN fittings on the back that go to the catch can, and then the catch can will return back to the back of the engine, and this will get gone. But for this season, what we're gonna do is just get rid of this, run 1 line to the catch can, because that's all we have for now, which should be sufficient for 200 horsepower. We didn't end up popping a head gasket. I believe we popped the head gasket because we lean popped it, basically meaning the fuel tanks in these cars are terrible for turns or acceleration. Honestly, if you go to a half tank, you're empty. And it really stinks because we need to push it for 2 hours, only got an hour and a half, and it kept lean popping. Lean popping is when the injectors don't have full fuel pressure behind them, so when they spray, they kind of cough. You don't get the amount of fuel that you need. It goes lean, and under boost, that tears stuff up. So we're gonna look into a surge tank, but we're gonna be careful with the fuel this year. Well, I guess for this race this year, and then we'll get a surge tank in it, and I will explain how that works when we get to it, but it'll help with that. And it'll take a little bit of extra wiring and circuitry to make that work. That I'm like out of breath. Am I fat? Good God. Okay, moving on. Last thing, center console. That is a DX center console. Talked about that earlier. Robert went out and, I should say that Dan put all this back together. So thank you, Dan. Robert went out and in the parts car in the dark for me. Robert, I appreciate it. If you're watching this, thank you. He took out the center console there, and then he took out the glove box, the lower center panel, and the driver's lower panel there. And then we're basically going to use those to kind of make a complete dash. Dan also looked into a couple different ways to mount that ECU, or PCM is what it's actually called, to just see if we can make a better system there, because it can't go there because the roll cage is in the way now. So, which is fine, you know, putting safety in the way of something is 100% okay with me. I got the pedals mounted. I have the connectors for those. I need to wire them into the dash harness because the top one there is the starter safety. The one below it is going to be our full throttle shift switch, brake switch there. Now, this is where stuff gets interesting. I know I'm talking a lot, but this is kind of really cool. This is something I'm going to work really hard on. I hope it works, and if whether it works or it fails, I'm going to share it. So inside that brake switch, you see 2 large pins, 2 small pins. The 2 large pins are what send power to the brake lights. That used to be able to handle like 15 amps. Well, our new brake lights draw about 1.25 amps. So that obviously is way overkill, but you know, we're gonna reuse it anyway. The 2 small pins went to the automatic PCMs to tell them the brake had been pushed to put it into partial lockup on the torque converter in the case of an wheel lockup so that the engine didn't stall. So that is what's going to run to the Arduino I'm going to have controlling the AT computer. So I'm going to add those wires. They will be in this harness and they'll just run over to basically where the PCM is sitting. So that's the pedals. We got rid of the cruise control and stuff, and they're basically all hooked up and ready to go. So then I'll get the dash in there and get those wired up. And then I tried to find a rib nut tool, which is surprisingly hard to find. But nonetheless, I need a rib nut tool to anchor that positive cable and get it all set up underneath there. And then I'm gonna go buy some line tomorrow so that we can run the fittings for the cool suit into this guy, and then they will just come out somewhere over here once we get the seat in, and that'll be to the driver, and then the drink water will come up the back of the seat. Other than that, got some wiring done on the tail lights. I don't know if anybody really saw what this looked like before. I ran out of wire, I would have made it further. So that's what it looked like now. I will throw up the before picture right here. Yep, that's what it looked like before. Now we've got the rain light in there with some mil-spec DR25 on there and some blood red lights with smoked bottoms. Then, you know, the car's been through a lot. It's got 17,000 race miles on it, and you know, sides are caved in and stuff, so these lights don't necessarily fit great, but boy, do they look a lot better than they did before. So that is the update for this video, and there are 32 days until race day, so there is a lot of stuff about to happen on this thing. I'll try to keep the updates coming, but I'm going to try to get a mic that we can put on in our helmets while the race is going on. I know I've got the USB charger in the car so that we can basically talk and record everything that we're saying in the helmets, because sometimes it's funny. Other times it's intense. It's worth watching, and this race is going to be with some serious cars. So I'm working on making sure that we can get the video that we need as well. James has 2 really good GoPros, so we'll have those in the car. We always do. It's kind of an insurance policy. But otherwise, I'm trying to make sure that I can get the content from there to here. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me. Trying to keep the content coming, to keep growing the channel, because it is my dream to have the channel help fund what I do to put things on the channel. So we're getting there. It's a very, very small start, but it's worth it to me just to have the diary in the first place, and hopefully something I say on here can help somebody. So if you see something that you like or something that you want help with, if you're a D-Series, K-Series guy, whatever, you know, the K-Series and the other Civic, but definitely always willing to help. So hopefully this helps somebody. Hopefully this is interesting to somebody, and I'm going to keep it coming regardless of what the views look like. I'm going to keep it going, because eventually someday it'll help somebody. So get out there and get your hands dirty. It's worth it in the end. You always learn something, whether you break it or you make it. So get out there, get your hands dirty, do something, make something you can be proud of. We'll see you next time.